After collapse of Soviet Union, all ex-communist countries turn into Wild West. Criminals become more daring. They are organized, well-armed and equipped. Murder, stealing, extortion, and rape becomes their trademark. This is one of many true stories about those criminals and brave, determined people who try to bring them to justice. In the first half of 1990s, in Moscow, Russia, happened series of mysterious murders. Victims of hitman became well-known criminal authorities, thieves-in-law, Globus, Babin, Atari, Sylvester, Frog. Organization known as thieves-in-law were found in USSR during 1920s and 1940s in Gulag work camps. Millions of work camp slaves were guarded by powerful organizations like Cheka, GPU, OGPU and NKVD. Gulag needed additional control from inside, and thieves-in-law became this instrument. Their social function was to persuade laws of criminal world and keep it under control. In the beginning of 90s it seemed that their golden age had started, but in reality it turned into series of killings and funerals. Who stood behind these killings? One of most popular versions was secret organization known as Boomerang. On the night of July 22, 1993, in the center of Moscow, the peace at Olympusky Prospect was disturbed by a shooting. The operative group that arrived at the scene found dead body of a man. The witness of the shooting, the security guard of the nearby paid parking lot, testified that the dead man was an accidental victim. According to him, another man was killed or injured. His body was put in the trunk of a car by people unknown to him. He didn't remember registration number of the car. During inspection of the scene, an SKS carbine with an optical sight was found behind barrier. There was one more witness to the incident. A woman who was passing by saw a silver car, possibly Chevrolet, leaving parking lot in a hurry. When driving away, car had hit the nearby border. On closer inspection, woman's story was confirmed. The remains of the silver paint were sent for expertise. The missing body did not give peace to investigators. All hospitals and morgues in Moscow were urgently contacted, but it turns out no body with gunshot wound had arrived. The police officers on duty in the vicinity of the Olympic complex did not record anything suspicious. All that remained was to wait for the results of a paint examination. On the next day in Moscow happened another murder. In residential building staircase at Stroytely Street, lifeless body of Anatoly Smyanov was found. He was Deputy General Director of company TO Interformula. The identity of the deceased was established immediately, and not only by the documents found in his suitcase. He was well known to investigators by the nickname Rambo given to him in criminal circles. He was person very close to thief-in-law Globus. Rambo was killed just 3 steps away from his apartment. Globus and his friends, including Rambo, often visited nightclub at Olympusky Prospect. The girl from the club was questioned by the investigators and she remembered him well. According to her, he drank, then threatened someone and called his friends Globus and Babin. After the girl's testimony and the murder of Rambo, shootout near the Olympusky Prospect took on a completely different tone. It was concluded that there happened settling of mutual disagreements between the leaders of the Moscow's criminal world. The victim of this conflict was assumed to be either Globus or Babin. It was found out that Valery Dlugatsov, also known as Globus, owned a silver Chevrolet. It was he who was the victim of the attack. On the next day in Moscow's suburb, a Prolivka funeral of Globus was held. The funeral ceremony was filmed by investigators. At the moment of his death, Globus was known to be one of the 5 biggest criminal authorities in Moscow. His base of operations was located in a Prolivka. There, behind high fence, high-ranking Caucasian criminal elite held its meetings. A special checkpoint was set up on the highway near the Prolivka, which recorded all traffic movement in and around settlement. According to operative investigation data, deceased Globus controlled not only the Naro-Fominsky district in Moscow, but also several commercial and banking structures of Russia's capital. He was paid cut of profits by shops, casinos and restaurants. He had long been known as a wild card. One of his extortions was filmed with a hidden camera. Usually these conflicts end with a demonstrative showdowns, but not this one, probably because he was killed soon after. According to the logic, the next victim of this criminal war should be Babin. The press had already created their own versions about Rambo's and Globus's deaths. According to them, Moscow had decided to eliminate the criminal authorities, and this is done at behest of secretive organization Boomerang. Although the investigators did not believe in this version, Globus's right-hand man Babin Bonner was taken under surveillance. Babin was impulsive, emotional, he often performed actions that were illogical, unpredictable on the first impression, and as a result, he often evaded people tailing him. Once near VDNH, after leaving his car and security behind, Babin visited shooting range, as it turned out, just to shoot small-caliber firearms. Outdoor surveillance camera filmed that episode, investigators will remember it later. After several days, surveillance team lost Babin near Volokholamsk Highway, and half an hour later, through special communication line they were informed about shootout in that same area. The investigators arrived at the scene quickly. The person killed by the car was Babin. First impression was that killing shot was made from the side of the concrete fence, which was next to the shooting range, possibly through a previously prepared hole. Luckily, quick arrival of investigators saved life of an accidental witness who denied this version of the incident. At the time of the shooting, the owner of garage, which was located opposite the shooting range, saw a short person with a tennis racket bag in his hands. According to him, first shot at Babin was made from the garages and it was made by exactly this person. All of the signs and circumstances of all murders were similar, and it was confirmed by ballistics examination. As a result, it was decided to combine all three murders of criminal authorities into one case. However, along with Babin's death, all the leads to solving this series of murders were gone. Investigators realized that the murders of Globus, Rambo and Babin will lead to new ones. Someone persistently provoked leaders of the criminal world to a bloody power struggle. And they didn't have to wait long for it to happen. New claims that an organization under MVD called Boomerang or White Arrow eliminates criminal authorities under the guise of criminal worlds inside conflicts. According to operative data, it was found out that one of the reasons for intense clash between mafia clans is arrival of members of criminal organizations from Kuznets, Archangels and Kurgansk regions of Russia. These criminal authorities had decided to push out Moscow's criminal groups, especially Pykov and Kaukaz. Arkhangel's authorities in Moscow supported Kurgansk, among whom Alexander Salovnik was always singled out, because of his reputation in criminal world as a highly professional hitman. And then investigators remembered informant, who was helping them with surveillance of Babin. In his report, Alexander from Kurgan was mentioned. A random informant's meeting with Alexander took place near the aforementioned shooting range on the day when Babin was there. The unknown man from Kurgan had said that he was a former policeman, a Spetsnaz Special Forces operator, and even showed his badge. After reviewing video material with Babin, investigators made main discovery: the man next to the shooting range was Alexander Salovnik. The same Salovnik, who has been under active search for several years and whom investigators ironically called the Terminator from Kurgan. The case of Alexander Salovnik was requested and the information found in it strengthened suspicions. According to his file, he was former employee of the MVD. After being dismissed from the police, he used fake documents on various names. He was a great shooter, graduated from the Spetsnaz school, and also a talented conspirator. Once he tried to use plastic surgery to change his appearance after escape from prison in Tumen. Salovnik was known for several escapes. The first time he tried to escape was at the courtroom, then from correctional colony, where only thing left behind him was his jacket with prisoner's number as a memento. Despite his status as a former police officer and the fact that he was imprisoned for rape, Salovnik felt quite comfortable there. Based on Babin murder investigation data, it was concluded that Salovnik is in Moscow. It was decided to launch a special operation to search for him. During this search in one of Moscow's apartments, where it was assumed that he could stay, a whole arsenal of firearms was found and taken out. T.T. pistol, AKS assault rifle, Mosin rifle among others were taken out. Salovnik himself had not visited this apartment for a long time. That's when another discovery was made. A video cassette was found with a recording in which several people celebrate outside Russia. Salovnik himself was not in the video, but operator's voice was identified as his. Now it was clear where he disappeared to after all his escapes. Passport and customs control was strengthened. Salovnik's arrival in Moscow provoked a strong reaction from security agencies. A series of raids were carried out on hotels, markets, and railway stations. The paradox of this situation lies in the fact that just by arresting Salovnik, law enforcement agencies could destroy the myth of Boomerang, especially since Terminator's name was already associated with that secret organization. Sergei Timofey, also known as Sylvester, died on November 13, 1994 as a result of a car explosion. Since the end of the 80s, Sylvester was one of the most prominent criminal figures in Moscow. He actively cooperated with criminal group Solntsevskaya. He was considered a recognized authority of Slavic criminal clans and an antagonist of Pykov's. Sylvester's death reinforced rumors about secretive Boomerang organization. Now this deeply conspiratorial organization was said to be operating under the command of the Special Forces of the Russian Federation, or MVD. It was reflected in the press with a lot of fiction. Sylvester's death pushed investigators to intensify their search for Salovnik. On October 1994, he was arrested in Moscow, at Petrovsk Market. His arrest turned into a shootout with dozens of witnesses. The sequence of events was as follows. Police units stopped two men. One of police officers recognized Salovnik. After being asked to show their IDs, Salovnik opened fire. The policemen were killed on the spot. Market guards and nearby police patrols responded to the shots. After murder of police officers, the man tried to blend into nearby crowd and run towards railway. He ran fast and at times made shots with unbelievable precision. As a result, 3 more police officers and 1 market security guard were killed. The death toll may be much higher hadn't he been wounded not far from the railroad tracks. He was put into handcuffs, despite the fact that he was barely alive. The bullet had hit his kidney. If he hadn't been so badly injured, he would have managed to escape. If he hadn't been so badly injured, he probably wouldn't have spoken. Salovnik's first testimony was already in hospital, then they were in solitary confinement. He confessed to a series of murders, including Globus, Rambo, and Babin. The crimes committed by Hitman were quite impressive. According to him, the hunting season on Globus was ordered by Arkhangel's crime gang when it arrived in Moscow. Dispute was said to be about failed attempt to divide control over Arlequina nightclub. That's why Globus urgently called Boban and Rambo to a meet with him at Olympiyski, but it was too late. Salovnik killed Globus. The next phase of the war with Caucasians involved Sylvester, who gave permission to finish off Babin. By the moment Salovnik was arrested, Sylvester was already dead. The main surprise of Salovnik's testimony was information about criminal groups forming their own special unit, the Mafia Spec Ops. He was recruited in it when he was still in prison. Ironically, with disappearance of the legend of Boomerang, new one showed up. It appears criminal world creates and trains special units of professional killers, arms them, and uses by necessity. Now Salovnik was confined in the detention cell number 1, a solitary cell. He was reading a lot, watching TV and learning English on his own. He also testified in great detail. According to his testimony, he and his men followed Babin for quite a long time before his murder. They analyzed his routes and movements. It turns out, at one point, Babin was under double surveillance from both police and Salovnik, but the police did not notice it. It was found out that when Salovnik tailed Babin and was preparing for his murder, people of dead Globus sought after Salovnik to take revenge for their leader's death. In preparation, a hole was made in fence surrounding shooting range for deceit shot. Salovnik himself was stationed in the opposite direction, behind the garage, from where he made his one and only shot that killed Babin. If investigators had not arrived so quickly, he would have also killed the only witness. He hid his weapon in a tennis racket bag and disappeared. At the time of his interviews, Salovnik made impression of a gun nut. He often talked about different weapon systems, their characteristics, gave his evaluations. It turns out that his preferred pistol was Austrian Glock series. Salovnik's case was quickly moving towards conclusion and everyone was waiting for it, from reporters to prosecutor's office and MVD. It was assumed that charges against Salovnik will be raised in August 1995. Several investigation experiments were carried out. On each of them investigators were given bulletproof vests, because they were afraid of assassination attempts carried out against Salovnik by the people of Globus or Babin, who were still looking for retribution. On the night of 5th of July, 1995, prisoner of the cell 938, Alexander Salovnik, disappeared without a trace. That evening prisoner march went on without an incident. Everyone returns to their cells, but after 2 hours it becomes clear that the resident of cell 938 is not there. Alarm was raised immediately. Nothing suspicious was found when inspecting the premises. Bars were intact, but it was discovered that the hatch leading to the roof was not locked. Guard post on the roof was empty. Sergei Menshikov, born in 1974, was working as a prison guard less than a year when he disappeared together with Salovnik. When inspecting roof, a climbing rope was found. This rope allowed to descend directly to the adjacent Matroskaya Street. Alexander Salovnik, the Terminator, had made his last and most famous escape. It was clear that his escape was carefully planned, but who did it, and how? His only ally could be security guard, but why weren't surveillance cameras working that night? No one had answers to these questions. The castle plan was immediately activated. Police work was intensified. Suspicious persons were detained. Everyone's documents were checked upon entry and exit from Moscow. Once again a series of dwellings where Salovnik could hide were raided. The documents of people who left the country were subjected to an intensified check. The image of the criminal was distributed everywhere, but everything was in vain. Alexander Salovnik had disappeared. His escape brought up even bigger question: why Alexander Salovnik disappeared right after he had given public testimony dispelling all rumors about mysterious Boomerang. And just like that, the Terminator was gone. Thank you for watching. Feel free to leave comments down below. Next story in series. Several men are found dead in St. Petersburg. Only thing connecting these murders is signature of killer, gunshot in crotch.